welcome back everybody. One of the things that I wanted to talk about in this video, and I haven't done a video on YouTube in a little while, I've been steadily recording for the CCNP 300-101 route exam. I am currently sitting at around 150 videos and about 40 hours worth of content for all of that. I wanted to cover some topics that I've been getting hit up on a lot lately, which is geared towards the service provider track, which is the one I'm currently studying for. Now, as it sits right now, there's a lot of people requesting a lot of material, and I'm one person recording material. So it's going to take a little bit of time for myself to get through all of the material that people want to learn, which is good. I'm glad to have a lot of work to do, but at the same point in time, I want to make sure that it is covered in a very thorough manner that is very accurate. So it takes a long time to go through and put together an accurate level of information and deliver it in a way that people actually want to listen. So one question I have been getting a ton of lately is when it comes to setting up a lab. And what do you use for your lab? What are some of the options that are out there for me? Stuff like that. So first and foremost, one of the things that I did early on in my IT career, and this is going back probably 5 years ago, was I focused on building out a home lab. And one of the first things that I did was I bought some physical gear. And I talked to my wife. We decided to invest some tax time money we got from our tax return into some hardware so that I could start to expand my understanding. Because GNS3 is great for some things. There are other things where you just, for some people, having physical gear allows that connection. You know, not everybody has the ability to, on the fly, like myself. I can differentiate on the fly the difference between the physical layer and the logical layer. So I can look at a topology and understand how something is physically cabled together, and then I can also understand from a logical layer how the traffic is actually forwarding in the network. Because what might appear to be the actual path of something may not actually be the way that the traffic is being forwarded. So being able to differentiate between those two is very, very important. The one thing that a lot of people have a hard time doing is they have a hard time earlier in their career when they're first starting to build that fundamental understanding of the actual why this cable being plugged into this particular port has any significance. When you're just dragging a line in a desktop application from a icon on a screen to another icon on that same screen, you don't get that same level of that click. You know, some people they enjoy hearing that little tab on the RJ45 jack click into the port. You know, you slide in, you go, and you hear that little click. I work with regular gear on a pretty regular basis in my day job, so I don't really need that. But I know what's going on in the back end when it comes to how the logical configuration is set up. So what I wanted to do today was to walk you through a pretty high level basic breakdown to how I've got my CCIE service provider, my CCNP service provider, and my CCIE routing and switching topologies and labs set up. I personally run ESXi. I have 2 physical hosts, and one of those hosts has 128 gigs of RAM, the other one has 64. I have a third IBM server, which everything is hosted on IBM. I have a third IBM server that is running Windows 7. And I chose to do that because that will help me with the VMware side of the things. So I can run things in VMware and get the connectivity running and all that good stuff along those lines. So VMware's out of scope for this particular topic, so I'm not even going to sit there and waste any of your time. Where we're focusing here today is on the how I build out my lab. And the one thing that you're going to find as we're getting into the service provider track is it is a different animal than what some of you might be familiar with when it comes to routing and switching. If you already work for a service provider, chances are you're already going to be dealing with the concept of the core and the aggregation or the access. But if you're not familiar with that, we're going to talk about how that comes into play. And I've got a couple of scenarios that we'll be walking through down the road that might actually help you understand some of these topics and why they are important to understand. So topology wise, I'm not going to show you any like logical diagram or a physical wiring. What I will show you is how I am using VMware in ESXi to logically separate traffic. So I'll pull my pen pad out here in just a moment, and we'll get into some of the meat and potato breakdowns to how this actually comes together. Because if you understand what's going on, you'll be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. At least that's my hope. So let me go here and start breaking down how I'm actually pulling this off. So I am almost done with the CCNP route course, which means that in a very short period of time, I will start the CCNP switch and then CCNP T-shoot. I haven't decided yet at this time, at the time of this recording, how exactly I'm going to go about delivering those, or for the T-shoot course. But I will figure something out here in the near future. What I want to focus on right now is I want to focus on how I'm getting everything to work the way that I need it to. So one of the things that I find a lot of people have a hard time understanding is the logical aspect of things. If you are somebody that needs to click a cable or plug a cable into a port in order for you to really understand that, that's fine if you wanted to go ahead and do that. Let me explain from a high level what exactly it is that I'm doing, and this might actually help answer a lot of questions. Because understanding how to build a lab is going to be very, very important. So from a lab perspective, go ahead and pull up my pen pad here, and go ahead and just move my my mouse cable is actually in the way, so pardon me while I do this. There we go. Let me switch over to blue. So normally, when you have a connection, we'll say we'll draw R1, we'll draw him in a circle, and then we'll connect to R2, draw him in a circle, and then like R3, he'll be in a circle, and then we'll draw a LAN segment off this. Now, what I'm basically doing with this configuration here is normally this is going to be an Ethernet connection between here and here, here and here. I can simulate a LAN segment with a loopback, something along those lines, and that will at least allow me to show reachability in the network. Okay, everybody, most people get that. If you're going to do this in the physical world, then you're going to have to connect these routers together. However, the problem that you're going to have is this will be, maybe this is fast 0/0 here, or maybe this is fast 0/1 over here. That means you're physically wiring these devices together in a inline manner, which means that if you want to add to the topology or make the network grow, you really don't have the ability to do that. You actually have to physically add more devices and change IP addressing. One option that's available to you, whether it's physical or virtual, is the concept of taking a bunch of routers. Let's say we do R1, R2, R3, and R4, and then connect them to a switch. It could be anything, as long as the switch supports .1Q trunks, you'll be in good shape. And then what you do is you run a line from the router to the switch. Along those lines. Whatever port you can configure them on, just configure this to be a trunk here, a trunk here, a trunk here, and the trunk here. And then right here on this physical interface, you no-shut the physical interface, and then you create a bunch of .1Q subinterfaces, so .10 or .12. And this guy over here would have, say, .12 and .23. And this guy would be .23, and this guy would be .34. Something along those lines. And then what you would end up doing is by having this in place, you would assign an encapsulation so that R1 and R2 would be able to talk on the .1Q12 interface. Routers 2 and 3 would be able to talk to each other on the .23 interface. Routers 3 and 4 would be able to talk to each other on the .34 interfaces, etc. Then you can say loopback 0 and give it a 4444/32 address. This guy over here could be 1111/32 on loopback 0. And then what you could do is you could advertise that in. So we'll say we're using OSPF. You would see a OSPF route for 4444 coming in, and then over here you'd see an OSPF for 1111 coming in. So that would be a way for you to play with the configuration and at least do some basic configuration. 4 routers connected to a common switch, and then if I wanted to allow R1 and R3 to talk to each other, then I'd be able to just create a .1Q subinterface, so you have .13 and .13, and then R1 and R3 would be able to talk to each other. As long as you've created that VLAN and everything is good to go, that's basically how you would do that. What I'm doing is I'm doing this exact same configuration here, right here. That's what this is right here. See where it says VLAN ID all 4095? What I'm basically doing is I'm turning the individual V switch into, which is basically this guy right here, is this guy right here, right? The same thing. The only thing different about them is the V switch allows me to allow communication between all the routers, and by having it set up as a trunk link, every port, that entire trunk for that particular, for all the VLANs, can talk to each other. So then I can make R1 and R2 be able to talk to each other, and I'll be able to form a dynamic routing adjacency over it. That's what enables that capability to happen. So that's just basic connectivity. So for those of you that are looking to study CCNA, CCNP, CCIE, for the RNS track, this is exactly how I'm delivering it via the CSR1000V. I've got 14 routers that I'm going to be using, and I'll be using a combination of both viral switches and physical switches to do some of the deployment. There's a couple topics for CCIE like UDLD and some other like flex links that I will demonstrate on physical gear that the virtual gear does not support. So these are capabilities that are available to you, but because of the fact of the way that the configuration is laid out, it'll give me the ability to play with it and give you that flexibility. So what I've showed you here is how I would say for CCNA, CCNA, CCNP, and CCIE RNS. If you leverage this, as long as you're running the right version of code on the individual routers, then you should be able to pretty much, play with anything you pretty much can put in here. So I give you a lot of flexibility in order to play with that. That's how I set my route switch lab up. And you can do this in GNS3, which is exactly what I'm doing right here. If I go over here to my workstation lab, go ahead and bring this guy down. Go ahead and just actually close this guy out. Continue without saving. Go ahead and clear the screen off real quick. This is exactly how I'm doing it. All these routers 1 through 20, all connect back to this common switch. If I click on here and I hover over it, I have all these different routers connected to all these different, this individual switch. And what I do is I simply, I no shut the main interface, so fast Ethernet 0/0 on the router, and then underneath the router, I pull up the router, and you take like a router 1 and I do a show IP interface brief. I have a bunch of sub interfaces here, .11, .12, .13, .20, and this allows me to communicate with these routers so that I can create connectivity between them. So that's basically what I'm doing. I'm just doing .1Q sub interfaces between them, and that's how you get this up and running. Now the way that I have to do some things for service provider is a little bit different. So this goes for service provider right here. This is my CCNP service provider rack, or my vSwitch that I've got for CCNP service provider. And I have 14 iOS routers and 8 XRV routers. And I have a topology that I've pre-built that will allow me to test out a lot of the technologies. And it's a pretty involved topology, but it'll allow me to test out a lot of features. And I've got routers 1 through 12, so CSR 1 through CSR 12. Those will be routers that will be in the provider network. CSR 13 and CSR 14, these guys right here. Go ahead and pull up my pen pad here. These guys right here, this is all SP space. These are all SP routers. Down here, XRV1 through XRV8, these are all SP routers. R13 and R14 are going to be used as customer devices, so customer 1 and customer 2, and I'll have multiple VRFs configured on the the routers to support the simulation of remote sites. So we'll be able to play with that and how that comes into play and go from there. So that's basically how I would go about getting connectivity working and stuff like that. So that's my SP lab. Now, there's a couple of situations that come into play for both layer 3 VPN and layer 2 VPN in the service provider track. One of them is let's say I have the SP core set up here with a number of routers. So we'll just draw a few here just for simplicity's sake. So they're all connected to each other, and this is acting as the core and stuff like that. Now I have, let's say I have these are all provider core routers. Let's say I have a provider edge router sitting out here, right? This guy connects back to this guy and connects back to this guy. Well, this guy then comes down here and connects down to, customer 1 and all as well. Then I have, let's say, customer 1, site 1. And then I have another provider edge router that's over here. Connect him back here to here and to here. And then he connects up to customer 1, site 2. Okay? Now, this would be considered to be the core, right? And this would be the access, because he could be aggregating multiple connections. Inside of the SP core, the configuration that I have sitting right here, the way that I got these set up right here, this is how I would set up this right here. They would all be able to reach each other. It's the provider edge that would be a little bit different. So what I would say is, let's take an example of like this, where I've got, let's say we have P router, we have a P router, we have a P router, and we have a P router, and a P router. I'm going to be connected to these devices like this, right? I'm going to have a PE router, and there's going to be a connection here, and then the PE router is going to connect down to customer 1, site 1, and this guy over here is going to connect down to, let's say, something along these lines, PE, and then we're going to connect down to customer 1, site 2. Okay, that's going to be how they all connect. So from here to here, inside the provider core, these guys will be in vSwitch 1, for instance. And then from the provider core to the provider edge, if this was for Q in Q, or .1Q encapsulation, .1Q inside of .1Q, I would have to create a different vSwitch. So let's say this is vSwitch 2, and then you would put the interface on provider edge 1. So let's say this is .12, and this is, you would place this interface into a different, let's say we put 11 here. You would put this particular interface inside of a different vSwitch, and then this guy would be also in that same vSwitch. So they'd be able to communicate with each other back and forth, and you'd be able to test the Q and Q. This also goes for layer 3, because then what I can do is, for every one of these customers, this could be a different connection. Or you could have multiple customers. So you might have customer 1, site 3 connects to the same provider edge router, and they're able to communicate through the provider edge. But let's say, for instance, I have a different layer 3 circuit that I come in on. I could change the vSwitch this guy sits in. Let's say this guy connects to vSwitch 3, and this guy connects to vSwitch 4. This is totally supported, and the reason why it's supported is because as long as all the routers have an interface in the adjacent vSwitch, then it's not going to be any different than me having customer 1, site 1, connecting to provider edge, connecting to provider, connecting to provider, connecting to PE, connecting to customer 1, site 2, in a physical cabling connection. Because for every interface that you apply to a different vSwitch, it's a different broadcast domain anyway. So that's how I would go about doing that. I'd be able to get that connectivity up and running and play with it. Now, when you're doing it, you have to be careful, because you can't move a sub interface, which is a logical multiplexing of a physical interface. You'd have to actually move or add another physical interface to the mix, and then move him, and then have the the multiple VLAN IDs applied through multiple .1Q subinterfaces. So there's lots of ways to pull it off. But this is the one thing that I see a lot of people struggling with and stuff like that. And this is going to be the basic breakdown to how you would go about getting that done. I'm going to, when we get to the layer 2 section for the CCNA, CCNP, and CCIE courses that will be coming out for service provider starting out here pretty quick, then that'll be a pretty obvious situation. So another question I get a lot is, what does your release schedule look like? Well, I've been working pretty diligently on trying to get all of the material out for CCNP route. I'm sitting at right around 150 videos, and it's about 45 hours worth of content, which I think is pretty fair. I don't sit there and waste your time. Some of the videos are 20 minutes. Some of them, there's a few that are over 20 minutes that are half an hour plus, but they're far and few between. The average time frame for each video is between 15 and 20 minutes. And I did that on purpose because I knew people would want to get right into the meat and potatoes. I don't waste any time getting into the material. I talk about what the technology is and I get into configuring it. I don't want to waste your time because I know your time is valuable. So one of the things that I end up doing is I am planning on finishing up the route course in the next couple of days, and then as soon as the videos are released or are completed, the entire course has been released as I've been finishing material. So there's been material that's been out there for a couple of months now, and it's been ready to go. People can watch it today. You buy the route course today from Rikers Island Training. You click on the route exam, you purchase it, and then you'll have all the material that's available to you right now available. The workbook is still in production. The work will be released soon after the video course is released, because I have to go back through and I have to add some highlights and some specific detail breakdowns and how stuff is working, because it is the CCNP level workbook. It's about 150 pages right now, stuff like that. So I'm looking at a May, actually let's say a 5/1 release date for all the material for CCNP route. The workbook I'm expecting sometime by 5/14. That'll give me a couple weeks to get that out and done. It's going to take you longer than that to watch the content anyway, so I figure that'll give me a couple weeks buffer to get everything out and ready to go. I'm looking at starting CCNP Switch somewhere around this time frame, so 5/14, and sometime in June, 6/something, to be finished with that and ready to roll. Then T-Shoot will start. When T-Shoot will start as soon as CCNP Switch is done, and that'll be a 6 time frame through, I'm guessing, 7-something. I don't really have a hard date for that yet. Once this is done, then I will move into CCIE routing and switching, and I'm going to be releasing CCIE route switch course material as I finish it. The same thing with all of these, and the reason I can do that is because I already hold a CCIE in routing and switching. Once I'm done with the CCIE route switch course, what you might see, it might take some time. It's going to be more content than CCNP. I'm guessing that between the route course and the switch course, you're looking at probably 200 videos or so. That's probably what you're going to see for CCIE. I'm going to record another bunch of videos for CCIE, and that's going to be around 200 videos as well, probably more. And as I finish the workbooks, I'm going to be sending the workbooks out. So when I finish protocol independent routing, that work will be completed, and then it will be available for you to download and buy. Whenever you buy the workbooks for CCIE, you buy the workbook once. You buy the bundle. It comes with all the individual workbooks. Whatever I set the price point at, right, I haven't decided what that's going to be yet. Once you have purchased it, as the workbook material gets released, I will put an update out. People will be able to grab that information when it comes down. You download the new zip file. The new PDFs will be available to you. CCIE, I'm guessing, will start sometime in sometime in July, and will run. I'm guessing it's going to take me between 3 and 4 months to record everything. I've recorded about 150 videos in a 2-month time frame, so I'm figuring Switch is going to take me about probably a month to record. So I'm figuring sometime between 10 and 11 2017 is when that release date will come out, and then the workbooks will be coming out intermittently as the video courses are released. The video course for that section, so OSPF will get recorded and then will be released, and then shortly after the release of OSPF, the OSPF portion of the workbook will be available to you. And then once I'm done with that, that'll put me towards the end of the year, which at this point in time I should be done with my recertification for the RNS track, and I will be starting on the CCNA, and CCNP for service provider. Those will start coming out, and then once as I release material for these courses, they will get uploaded and released, and then CCIE will be shortly thereafter for service provider. I can't release any CCIE service provider material, whether it's written or lab or a combination of either, until I've passed the CCIE service provider lab exam. Once I've passed that, then all those videos will come out and they'll be available for you as well. I am planning on doing a pretty same concept with the CCNA for the RNS track. Applies for CCNA and CCNP track. So as I release the CCNA courses, the workbooks will be available. Just keep in mind that the workbooks for CCNA will come out, and they probably won't be as in-depth as or as comprehensive as CCNA or CCNP and CCIE. They'll be covering the technologies that actually require implementation. The CCNP will be the same kind of concept. Once I'm done recording a particular section of material, then that will get released and away we go. Once I have CCNA and CCNP completely recorded and released, I will be at the same point in time, I will be studying for my my service provider lab. So I will be going through and testing the technologies out, and I will be recording the content before I go sit for the lab. So by the time I'm at the lab, I'll be ready and I'll have already hit all the technologies. The day that I pass will be the day that I start uploading the service provider CCIE content. I won't put that out and up and available to anybody until I've passed the lab. It'll probably take probably a week or so for all that material to upload to my content delivery network, and then I'll be able to put that out on the website for everybody to purchase. And then you guys will be able to go along with that. That is my release schedule. And then once I'm done with service provider, I'm guessing sometime next year, this time frame next year, it's probably going to take me at least a year to get through all of it. I've spent I passed the CCNP service provider certification in December of 2016. It's now almost May for 2017, and I've covered a good portion of the service provider blueprint, and I've taken a lot of notes. It's a lot of theory, though. I've covered a lot of theory, and I will be hitting, in the near future, I will be hitting up the SP material a little bit more consistently, because I'll be, the nice thing about the CCNA and the CCNP for service provider is a lot of that material I already know, so it's just going to be a matter of me talking about it and then doing a base demonstration of how to get the technology to work. When I took the CCNP service provider exams, there were no configuration labs. It was all theory. So your mileage may vary. I didn't get any. It was all written questions. There was nothing in there that I had to go configure. So your mileage may vary. I don't know if they ever did, if they ever will. I found the CCNP service provider exams to be difficult in the respect for the level of content that they were testing you on. And there was some stuff that I wasn't 100% familiar with when I sat for the exam, and I had to go back and research those materials so I'd have a better understanding of them. But I took the exams, and after I had recorded the material, So I felt pretty good about going in there because I'd already hit everything, and I did pretty well. I passed all 4 exams in the first attempt. So I'm hoping that that concept carries forward. Now, one of the things that I'm doing is additionally here is I'm going through and once I'm done with the service provider track, I will be spending, I'll be having some downtime, and I will be between now and then, I will be taking the time to write full-scale labs for CCIE route switch. So these full-scale labs will test you on the troubleshooting and the configuration. I won't test you on diagnostics because it's difficult to test you on diagnostics. There are ways for me to go through and test you on some stuff. Right now, I don't have an idea of how I would do that, but because well, I guess I could figure something out. But at the time of this recording, I haven't really figured that out yet, and I'm sure I will come up with something by that time. But that's basically how I'm going to go about doing it. So you will be getting full-scale labs here in the near future started, and then once this is all said and done, I will be making the switch to security and doing the security CCNA, CCNP, and eventually CCIE in the future. That is my game plan moving forward. I do have the plans to take the CCDP exam, the design professional. I don't know when that's going to happen. And when it does, I will then record a CCDP exam course for all of you to watch. And then if I ever decide to do Design Expert or CCDE, I'll do one as well for that. But that's pretty much where I'm at with all of my, with everything that I've got going on lately. If anybody has any questions, please drop a line in the comments. I will be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Moving forward, feel free to check out RikersIslandTraining.com on a pretty regular basis. As material that I can release is released, it will be, and workbooks will be going out. I've had some people ask me about rack rentals. I am working on a solution for that, but it won't be rack rentals for just the average Joe or the regular person to rent from. I am looking at the option of potentially doing boot camps in a like every Saturday or every other Saturday kind of mindset where we do this is just me talking off the top of my head. I haven't planned anything out yet, but where we go maybe 1 or 2 nights during the week for a few hours, and then during maybe a weekend day, we pick a date and then go forward with that. Boot camps, I've actually been getting a lot of requests for boot camps and stuff like that. Those would be, I have the idea in my head and how I would deploy that, and then how I would allow people that are taking the boot camp to log in and stuff like that. I have some theories in mind that I think I might be able to pull off, but I will be testing those theories out here in the future, and those boot camps will be both routing and switching and service provider related because those are the areas that I'm familiar with. Once security gets done, I will. Security is a little bit different because of the fact that there's so many licenses. I'd had to figure out how I would replicate a functioning security lab that I could have somebody rent from me for a period of time. But boot camps are on the horizon. I am still working on the logistics on those, and when I think I have everything figured out, I will let everyone know, and then you will be able to start scheduling boot camps once that happens. It's going to be probably sometime early in 2018 when I get around to that, but we'll see exactly how that plays out. There is a question: how would you deliver your boot camps? Would they be live online or live in person? They would be online, and I would have to figure out what delivery mechanism, whether it's a Cisco WebEx or I go out and I purchase a professional license for I'm really not sure, like a team viewer. I really don't know. I would have to. That's again, logistically speaking, I have no idea how I'm going to pull it off. I know that a lot of people have asked for it, and I would have to sit there and think about how I would actually execute a boot camp. And the boot camps would be rather small, 10 to 15 people tops. Nothing larger than that, because then you start to you lose the value when you get too many people in a boot camp. The average boot camp size I've seen from other vendors is about that same size, but I would make it. I would figure something out. So the reason why I would do the live online is because I see a lot of the training that I've had to take for different jobs and for previous customers that I've worked with. Live online makes a lot more sense because then I'm not tied to a building or tied to a location all day. I could be, focused on something else and be there in the boot camp if need be. Whenever someone goes after their VMware Certified Professional certification, the VCP requires that someone sit for a mandated course, unless you've got another certification that will back you up on that, like a CCIE or a CCNP. So I leverage that capability. But I was fortunately enough for me, I was able to be sent by a customer that I worked for. They wanted me to go learn it, so I went and I sat for the exam, or sat for the required training, and then I was able to go sit and grab the certification. So that's how I got my start with VMware. There's another question: will you be doing any VMware training in the future? Yes, I will be. I plan on doing a data center virtualization course as well as an NSX course, and then eventually end user computing. So like your VMware Horizon View, I will be doing a course for that as well at the entry level and then the mid level VCP. How far I take that, I really have no idea yet. VMware is its own animal, so we'll see exactly how that plays out. You guys have been awesome. Thank you so much for stopping by. And for those of you that are continued subscribers, or you are new subscribers, or you're just passing by, thanks for stopping by, and we'll catch you in the next video, guys. Thanks for stopping by. Catch you in the next one.